All right, today we're going to dive into what is, honestly, one of the most delicate balancing acts in all of medicine. So you've got this question right here. How do you destroy a tumor with radiation? I mean, it's a question oncologists grapple with every single day. And the goal seems simple enough, right? Just obliterate the cancer cells. But that's really only half the battle, because then there's this. How do you do it without destroying the patient? That's the real dilemma, isn't it? How can you create a treatment that's absolutely lethal to a tumor, but totally survivable for all the healthy stuff around it? Well, the answer, it turns out, is buried in the incredible science of radiobiology. And to help us unpack all this, we're going to lean on the work of two amazing experts, Dr. Perez Romasanta and Dr. Walls Zarita. They're both radiation oncologists, and on their fantastic YouTube channel, Radbioedge, they just break down the science beautifully. They explain the history and the formulas that completely revolutionized cancer treatment. So let's do what they do and start right at the beginning. Okay, so our story kicks off back in the 1970s. This is before what we'd call modern radiobiology really existed. Now, doctors knew that if you tweaked the dose or the number of radiation sessions, you'd get different results. But honestly, they were kind of flying blind. The first huge breakthrough came from a pioneer named Frank Ellis. He came up with this concept called the nominal standard dose, or NSD. And that led to these things called TDF tables. And you have to understand, this was a big deal. For the very first time, doctors actually had a tool that let them compare different radiation plans. And this is basically how it worked. A doctor could just look at a table, kind of like this one, and see that, okay, giving 30 small doses of 2 gray, that's biologically equivalent to giving, say, 16 bigger doses of 3 gray. It was an absolute game changer. But, and this is a big but, it had one giant fundamental flaw. You know, Dr. Perez Romasanta puts it perfectly. These tables, they basically assumed that every tissue in the body was exactly the same. So a formula that worked for your skin was also being used for the spinal cord, for the lung, for a tumor. I mean, we all know intuitively that can't possibly be right. Different parts of your body are, well, different. They react differently. Science needed a much smarter formula. And that's what brings us to the 1980s and the next great leap forward. Finally, we get a model that could actually tell the difference between the tumor and the patients. So the hero of this chapter is a guy named Jack Fowler. He introduced a concept that really underpins all of modern radiotherapy. It's called the biological effective dose, or BED. And it's a way to measure the true biological punch of any radiation plan. Okay, now don't freak out when you see this formula. You do not have to memorize it, I promise. The real power here is in the logic. You see, it calculates the total biological damage using the number of doses, the size of each dose, and this brand new, absolutely critical variable, the alpha/beta ratio. So what on earth is this alpha/beta ratio? Well, think of it like the biological secret code for every single tissue in your body. It's just one number, but it describes how sensitive a tissue is to getting zapped with big doses of radiation versus smaller ones. And that is the key that unlocks everything. And here's the breakthrough. It turns out that most tumors, they have a high alpha/beta ratio, somewhere around 10. But our critical healthy organs, they have a low alpha/beta ratio, around 3. Now, this difference is everything. It means that our healthy organs are super sensitive to the size of each individual radiation dose. But the tumors, they're more sensitive to the total cumulative dose they receive over the whole treatment. And that lets doctors get clever. They can use fewer, bigger doses, a technique called hypofractionation, to hammer the tumor, while causing proportionally less damage to the healthy tissue nearby. We can finally, selectively target the cancer. So the BED formula was this brilliant piece of theory, right? Just genius. But doctors on the front lines, they needed a simple way to actually use it, to compare different plans in a busy clinic. And that practical tool was delivered in 1983 by this incredible trio of pioneers, Withers, Thames, and Peters. They developed a concept called EQD2. That stands for equivalent dose in 2 gray fractions. Now, the beauty of EQD2 is that it acts like a universal currency. That's the perfect way to think about it. It lets you take any radiation plan, no matter how weird or complex it seems, and translate it back into the language everyone understood, that old 2 gray per day standard. So now, doctors could finally compare apples and oranges and know for sure which plan was going to be tougher on the tumor and safer for the patient. Okay, so we've got a formula that handles the dose and the tissue type. The puzzle's solved, right? We're done. Well, not quite. Turns out there's another huge factor the model had to learn to deal with: time. If you look at the full BED formula, you'll see it actually subtracts a time factor. But why? Well, it's because while you're busy treating the cancer, any surviving tumor cells aren't just taking it. No, they are fighting back. They're regrowing. So the longer a treatment drags on, the more the tumor repopulates, and that effectively cancels out some of the good work the radiation is doing. Just look at this real-world example from a head and neck cancer trial. A standard 7-week plan, it delivered a biological dose of about 71 BED. But by accelerating the exact same physical dose into just 5 weeks, the biological punch skyrockets to over 81 BED. Why? It's simple. The tumor had 2 fewer weeks to fight back and regrow. So that 2-week difference, that wasn't just a scheduling problem. It literally cost the treatment 10 full points of biological effectiveness. That is a massive loss. In the world of radiobiology, you have to remember, time is tissue, and delay is damage. So we've built up this really elegant model, this beautiful formula that seems to explain so much. But the final, and maybe the most important lesson from the experts over at Radbioedge is that even our best models are still just that. They're models. And models have limits. So think about this for a second. The model we've been talking about, it's based on pretty conventional radiation doses. But what happens when you start using modern super high-dose treatments like SBRT? Does that alpha/beta ratio, that secret code we thought we'd cracked for a tumor like prostate cancer, does it still even hold up? Well, the short answer is no, not really. It turns out to make the real-world results from these high-dose SBRT trials actually fit the formula, scientists had to go back and adjust the operative alpha/beta value for prostate cancer. Just accounting for the high doses made it jump from 1.5 to 2.5. Then, when they factored in time, it climbed again to 2.8. The secret code itself, it actually changes depending on how you're looking at it. And this really brings us to the core lesson here, which Dr. Pires Romasanta sums up perfectly. The alpha/beta ratio isn't some physical thing you can measure with a machine like temperature. It's an operative value. It's a powerful and absolutely essential tool for sure, but it's a tool that completely depends on which mathematical model we're applying at the time. It's the map. It's not the territory itself. So we've gone from a simple one-size-fits-all table all the way to a complex formula that juggles tissue type, dose, and even time. The story of radiobiology is really a story of constant refinement, of always getting a little bit smarter. It's a powerful reminder that science isn't a final destination, it's a journey. And as our treatments get even more powerful and more advanced, the question is always going to be, what new codes will we need to crack next?